You might not need your cookie consent pop-up on your website. No more awkward banners. No more accept all buttons. Seriously, you could be totally banner free. If you're using the right tools and not spying on your visitors, then you don't need cookies and you don't need pop-ups. Let's break it down and I'll explain why and how you can remove the need for cookie plugins. You've probably heard terms like essential cookies and non-essential cookies, but what do they actually mean? And which ones will get you into trouble if you don't ask first? Essential cookies are necessary for your website to function properly. They don't track your users, they don't collect marketing data. They just quietly do their job in the background to make sure your site works. You don't need to ask for permission to use essential cookies. Surprisingly, some examples of essential cookies are things like WooCommerce session cookies. These are things that remember what's in your visitor's shopping cart while they browse, so that items don't disappear when they jump from page to page within your website. Also, things like login authentication codes. So these things keep users logged in as they navigate throughout your website. So for example, if someone logs into their account, the cookie ensures that they are still logged in even if they go to a different page. And security cookies as well. These prevent spam or brute force attacks on your login pages, and even form submission cookies are okay. This is like a cookie that temporarily prevents double submissions or spam being submitted. Now, everything I've just mentioned, they are operational, okay? They don't gather marketing insights. They don't monitor your visitors or your users across the internet. They're just there to make sure your website functions smoothly, the whole user experience for the visitor. Now, if your website only uses these kind of cookies, you don't need a cookie banner. It sounds crazy, right? And you're probably wondering, why has no one really ever fully explained this? Because a lot of the time, a lot of cookie consent tools want you to think that you got to use their tool or subscribe to a premium version. Now, I just want to dig a little bit deeper into the WooCommerce because so many of us use it. So WooCommerce does use essential cookies like keeping track of your cart contents across your pages and also checking if there is anything in the cart. Now, all of these are needed for your store or your shop to function. Without them, your cart won't work because they are considered essential, and it's okay under the EU and the UK law. You don't need consent. But if you connect WooCommerce for Facebook Pixel, Google Analytics, retargeting adverts, marketing, things like MailChimp or cart abandonment tracking, then those tools are considered to be non-essential cookies. And that's where things change. So what exactly are non-essential cookies? These are the cookies used for marketing, behavioral analytics, advert targeting, and social media sharing as well. And a lot of us are going to say, damn, we do now need cookies. But remember, if you're not doing all of those things, you won't need a cookie consent tool. When you are using non-essential cookies, these require explicit opt-in consent for the UK and the EU. Here are some other examples of non-essential cookies. Google Analytics. These are cookies that track how the users move across your website. Facebook Pixel cookies. These track users so you can retarget them later. YouTube, Vimeo, videos, iframes where you're embedding. These are cookies that are collected even if the user has not played the video. There's still some tracking going on. What about heat map tools like Hotjar? This monitors where people click on your website, and even live chat cookies like TalkTo, because this will identify if a user has returned to like a page or a site, or if you need to track the chat history. None of those cookies are required for your site to function. They're used to collect extra data, which means under GDPR, you must get opt-in consent before using them or allowing them to track your visitors. And consent basically means clear explanation of what the cookie does. A real choice for the user to opt in or out. And nothing can be loaded until the user agrees. Now, unfortunately, I just want to really quickly cover what does the law say all about this. Let me try and simplify the global rules as simply as I can. Under the United Kingdom's GDPR and the EU directives, you must get prior consent for all non-essential cookies. Consent must be clear, informed, and freely given. You can't drop the cookies before consent is given, right? Even if you're just testing out the website, you must ensure that nothing loads until they've given that consent. And in actual honesty, your pages are still loading, right? Even before they've hit the accept all button. Maybe the Facebook pixel has already triggered off. So we have to be a little bit careful. And that is why when you're using Google Analytics, Facebook Pixel, or anything else that I've mentioned, we need to be using a consent banner. The ability to block the scripts until the user agrees. But of course, this video is all about how maybe you might not need to use a consent cookie banner tool. Let me now go over the United States and all of their acts and laws. Now, in California, it's a little bit different as to how things work, but basically you don't have to show a cookie banner, but you must disclose what data you collect. And if you're selling or sharing any personal data, you know, like with ad trackers and stuff like that, you must let users opt out. So even though a cookie banner isn't legally required in the US, like in the EU, you still need transparency and do not sell, do not share my info. You know, some form of link or information must be available. Now, the rest of the world is a bit like the US or catching up to the US. But the overall global trend, quite simply, is if you're tracking people, get their permission first. Do you need a cookie banner? If your website only uses essential cookies like WooCommerce sessions, login cookies, basic form protection, and it doesn't use any third-party analytics, ads, social media embeds, or marketing tools, then you don't need a cookie banner under the UK and EU law. But if you use any one of these, Google Analytics, Facebook Pixel, embedded YouTube videos, live chat tools, retargeting or email marketing tracking, subscription forms, SEO tools that integrate with third-party services, you know, Google Analytics that sits inside of Rank Math or Monster Insights, then yes, you must show a cookie banner. Let's talk about the analytics bit, because that's usually where most cookie confusion starts. If you want to understand your website traffic, you know, which pages are popular, where are people landing, where are your visitors coming from, how long are they on the page, and all of that, then you will need an analytics tool. You kind of can't get away from that. But not all analytical tools are created equally. Some are respectful and privacy first. Others are data-hungry, cookie-dropping machines that will 100% require consent pop-ups. So let's start with my recommendation for what you should be using for analytics that will also mean you don't have to have a cookie consent banner. I'm talking about independent analytics. This is a WordPress plugin designed to be cookie-free, privacy-friendly, and self-hosted, because all of the data stays on your server. It's all built within WordPress. And the key part is that independent analytics does not collect or store personal identifiable information. But don't worry, you're not losing out. You still get powerful insights like total visits and views per page, referrer sources like are they coming from Google, social media, or other website links, bounce rate, device and browser type, and you even get to know what country or city they're coming from because it's based on anonymized IP geolocation. So yes, you can still see how your site is performing, but you're doing it without invading privacy or requiring consent. And you can use it for free. Dropped a link to see my full review that I did on independent analytics in the video description as well. Let me now talk about Google Analytics. Here's where the problems begin. Google Analytics uses cookies to track users across sessions. It will assign unique IDs to users. It will collect data like device, location, behavior, and it builds long-term behavior profiles. I know it sounds creepy. Even if you're just tracking your traffic numbers, Google is collecting far more than that. And when you connect Google Analytics to Google Ads, YouTube, retargeting, or remarketing, then you're in deep non-essential territory. So under the UK and EU law, Google Analytics requires a cookie banner, must be blocked until consent is given, needs a clear explanation of what data is collected. And yes, even if you're using the Google Sitekit plugin that I know a lot of people do, you're still using Google Analytics behind the scenes. The Sitekit doesn't block the non-essential cookies. It just makes it easier to install Google Analytics on your website. Let me give you a quick comparison between Independent Analytics and Google Analytics and Google Sitekit. Independent Analytics does not use cookies. Google Sitekit and Google Analytics do. Independent Analytics does not track users across sessions. Google Analytics and Google Sitekit do. Independent Analytics does not store personal data or IDs. The other two do. And Independent Analytics does not send data to third parties. The others do, because they're sending it to the Google servers. And what happens after that? Anyone knows. Independent Analytics does not require a cookie consent banner. The other two, unfortunately, do. Now, you might say this all sounds a little bit too easy, but there may be occasions where you do need a cookie banner, even though you're not using Google Analytics or Google Sitekit. You are using Independent Analytics, but you might still need a cookies banner. And this is because you may be breaking some privacy laws without realizing it. And that's because you're using other tools on your website. I've already kind of mentioned some above, but let's just go back through some of the common culprits that silently add cookies to your website. Embedded YouTube or Vimeo videos, or basically almost any video that you've embedded. When you're embedding a video on your page, it might seem harmless, but YouTube, when you've embedded it in the default mode, does set third-party cookies even before the user presses play. These cookies track who's watching. They gather information about the device they're using and where they're located. It will connect the user behavior to Google adverts and YouTube suggestions. So even if you're not using that data, YouTube is. Now, you can switch to YouTube's privacy enhanced mode, and Elementor do have an option for you to do that, but you could also change the code. So when you click embed, you get a bit of code. What you want to do is add -no cookie before the .com, and this will enable some privacy, but this is still a very gray area. Another painful item that will mean you do need a cookie consent tool are the Facebook pixels or the Meta pixel. If you're running Facebook or Instagram adverts and you've added a pixel to track conversions or retarget the user, you're collecting behavioral data. And that definitely requires prior consent to be compliant. If you're using any live chat widgets, Talk to, Zendesk, live chat, stuff like that. These little chat boxes are great for customer support, but they often drop cookies to identify repeat visitors, maintain the chat history, track page views during the chat as well. You might not have realized that. But, you know, if it's connected and they're jumping to another page, it tracks what they were doing. And many of them will start loading cookies as soon as the page loads, because it's there, right, in the bottom right corner. So before the visitor does any interaction, it's already tracking. My recommendation is that if you are using any live chat plugin or feature, go and check the documentation from the provider and basically assume that you do need to get cookie consent unless they specifically do state that nothing is being tracked. This one will affect so many people, social media embeds. So if you're adding like an Instagram post, a Facebook widget, you know, a timeline of X, or, you know, you're pulling through stuff, you know, there's so many plugins out there. Those embeds are mini iframes and they are basically loading data. They will track what you do. Do you click a post and go over to Instagram? And of course, they will be setting some third-party cookies for advertising later on. What if you're looking at heat maps, A/B testing or behavioral tracking tools? Stuff like Hotjar, basically anything that records, your mouse movements, where you click, where you scroll. Because the way they work is they assign a unique ID to each user so that they can track you, and that makes them 100% non-essential. Maybe you've embedded like an iframe for a subscription form or some form of email marketing, signing up for a newsletter, cart abandonment trackers. All of these are non-essential. And we have to go even deeper. Maybe you've got a pop-up and maybe you've set up like a display condition. So you're going to say, do not display this if the viewer has already seen the pop-up or after 3 occasions. Basically, you're tracking how many times they've seen the pop-up or they've landed on a particular page or if they've interacted with a certain feature. I hate to say it, but you're going to need a cookie consent banner if you're doing that. And here's another big one. If you're using an SEO tool or another analytics plugin that's got some form of Google Analytics built in, maybe you're using a plugin like Rank Math or Monster Insights or Jetpack. They've all got Google Analytics integrations built into them. So yeah, you're still going to need a cookie consent tool. And don't start shouting at me about, well, what else can I use? There are other plugins out there, much lighter ones, where they're not doing a direct Google Analytics integration or anything like that. So, think outside the box. You can still use SEO tools, but maybe consider switching to independent analytics instead. I hope that provides a bit of clarity as to why you will or will not need a cookie consent banner. Maybe it gets you thinking about using a different analytics tool. Maybe we've all been duped for many years and decades into thinking we need to use Google Analytics, but there are other tools out there, and I strongly recommend independent analytics. You can use it for free. There are other features that you can get with a pro version, but believe me, I think a lot of you will be very happy with the free version. If you're okay with a cookie consent banner or a pop-up appearing on your page, especially on the mobile, you've got this amazing hero banner, right? It's playing a video or there's something happening. And then as soon as the viewer or the user goes to the page and they're looking at it, boom, this banner appears. And yeah, I know you can accept all or reject and all of that, but it is deeply annoying. And it's one of the things I despise about the internet and why we have to have this. Because I'm pretty sure no one is asking me for permission when there's a camera on me if I walk into a shop. But anyway, look, with the internet, it's so convoluted these days with what we do and do not need. But do think hard about, do you still need a cookie consent banner? And if you are doing lots of the things I've mentioned, you will still need it. But if you're not, you've got a simple website and you're not, even with WooCommerce, you can still have a website with WooCommerce and cart and checkout and all of that, but you don't need a cookie consent tool. It's only if you start including things like cart abandonment, Facebook Pixel, or Google Analytics. So go and analyze your website. And if you're still a bit unsure, there are some online tools that will check your website. But why don't you take your URL, stick it into ChatGPT, do the deep research mode and say, analyze my website. Do I need a cookie consent banner? And you will be surprised at how good it is to go and dig a bit deeper. But like I've said, I don't want to use Google Analytics now on any of my websites, and I'm now transferring over some legacy websites to independent analytics. Hey, I'm Imran from Web Squadron. I hope you like, subscribe, share, and follow. Go have a cookie.